Michael had always thought of himself as a practical man, a realist who didn't believe in love at first sight. He'd heard stories about it, of course, and maybe he'd dreamed about it once or twice, but deep down, he figured it was just one of those fairy tales that belonged in books or movies, not real life. But that all changed the night he met Sarah. It was a charity gala, one of those events he attended out of obligation rather than desire. His colleagues had convinced him to come, reminding him how great it would look on his resume and how many potential clients might be there. Michael wasn't the type to mingle in such high society circles, but there he was, dressed in a crisp black tuxedo, fidgeting with his cufflinks as he scanned the crowded ballroom. The noise of laughter and conversation surrounded him, the clinking of glasses and soft jazz music filling the air. Then, across the room, he saw her. Sarah was standing near the refreshment table, chatting with a small group of people. Michael's eyes locked on her almost instantly, drawn by her presence. She was stunning, elegant but approachable, her beauty not the kind that demanded attention, but somehow commanded it. Her laughter was warm and genuine, and it was as though the whole room softened when she spoke. His heart skipped a beat as he realized he was staring. He quickly looked away, not wanting to seem intrusive, but it was too late. She caught his eye and smiled, a small, knowing smile, as though she had sensed his gaze. Something about that smile tugged at him, urging him to take a step forward. Gathering his courage, Michael walked over. "Hi," he said, offering a friendly smile. "I'm Michael." She looked up, her smile widening. "Sarah," she replied, extending her hand. "Nice to meet you." Their handshake lingered for a moment longer than necessary, and Michael couldn't help but notice how soft her skin was, how comfortable she made him feel despite the formal setting. They talked for a while, moving from one topic to another with ease. They discovered they shared a passion for giving back to their communities, and their conversation quickly shifted to the charity event itself. They both laughed at how they had been roped into attending for all the wrong reasons, making fun of the speeches and the overpriced hors d'oeuvres. As the evening went on, their connection only grew stronger. Sarah's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm as she spoke about the causes close to her heart, and Michael found himself captivated by the way she could talk about even the most serious topics with both conviction and humor. Eventually, the night began to wind down, but neither of them wanted to part ways just yet. Michael took a chance. "Would you like to grab a drink sometime?" Without hesitation, Sarah smiled again, that same easy smile that made Michael's heart skip a beat. "I'd love to." They exchanged numbers, and as Michael walked out of the venue that night, he felt like something had shifted. He couldn't explain it, but he knew that meeting Sarah had somehow changed the course of his life. Their first official date was just a few days later, at a cozy little Italian restaurant that Michael had picked out. They'd agreed to keep it simple, no expectations, just two people getting to know each other better. From the moment they sat down, the world seemed to fade away. They spoke about everything: their childhoods, their favorite books, the places they wanted to visit, the dreams they hoped to achieve. Their laughter filled the space between them, and Michael found himself more and more drawn to Sarah. She was intelligent, beautiful, and had a wit that kept him on his toes. As the night wore on, they found themselves lingering over dessert, both unwilling to say goodbye. Michael was smitten, something he hadn't expected to feel so quickly. But there was something about Sarah, a warmth, an authenticity, that made him feel like he could be himself without any pretenses. Their relationship grew effortlessly. Weekend getaways, impromptu movie nights, and long walks through the park became their routine. They shared intimate details of their lives, fears, insecurities, hopes, and with each passing day, Michael felt closer to Sarah than he ever had with anyone else. One evening, after several months together, Michael took Sarah to a charming rooftop restaurant with a panoramic view of the city skyline. The lights below sparkled like stars, and everything felt perfect. Michael's heart raced as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Sarah," he began, his voice soft but filled with emotion. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Will you marry me?" Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Yes, of course." They embraced, the world around them disappearing as they celebrated their shared joy. In that moment, everything felt like it was falling into place. He had found his person. After the proposal, the excitement between Michael and Sarah reached new heights. Planning their wedding was an experience full of laughter, joy, and anticipation. They spent hours together, poring over every detail, from choosing the perfect venue to picking the flowers and selecting their wedding bands. They visited bridal shops, with Sarah trying on countless dresses, sending Michael pictures to get his opinion. They went to cake tastings, debating whether to go for chocolate or vanilla, and met with florists to choose the right color scheme. Michael couldn't help but feel a sense of awe as Sarah was swept up in the magic of it all. He loved seeing her so happy, so excited about the life they were building together. The guest list was finalized, and invitations were sent out. They worked hard to make sure everything would be perfect. The ceremony, the reception, the vows they would share. Their families were excited. Friends were eager to celebrate with them, and Michael felt like he was living in a dream. As their wedding day grew nearer, Michael found himself reflecting on how far they had come. He had found the woman he was going to spend the rest of his life with, and everything seemed right in the world. But, as fate would have it, that was about to change. It was the day before their wedding when everything came crashing down. Michael was going over last-minute details, checking the wedding coordinator's list of items when his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number appeared on the screen. Curious, Michael opened it, and his stomach dropped. The message was a screenshot of text between Sarah and someone he didn't recognize. They were flirtatious and intimate, with plans to meet in secret. Attached to the texts were photos, clear, undeniable photos of Sarah, with a man who was not Michael. His hands shook as he read the messages, each word feeling like a punch to the gut. The images were worse. It wasn't just an innocent flirtation, it was an affair. An affair that had been going on for who knows how long. Michael couldn't believe it. How could Sarah, the woman he was about to marry, do this to him? His mind raced with confusion and anger. The trust he had built over months of dating, the future he had envisioned, was all shattered in an instant. Michael's mind was a whirlwind as he stood frozen, staring at the screen of his phone. The images, the texts, it was all there, laid out in front of him. His world, just hours away from becoming perfect, was now a shattered mess. The betrayal was too much to bear. He felt as if the air had been sucked out of the room, leaving him gasping for breath. His thoughts raced, the realization settling in. Sarah, the woman he had trusted, loved, and planned a life with, had been lying to him. She had betrayed him with someone else, someone he had no idea existed in her life. His mind flitted between the details. Who was this man? When had it started? How long had she been deceiving him? Michael couldn't bring himself to confront her over text or call her. He needed to face her in person. His heart pounded as he dialed Sarah's number, his hands shaking uncontrollably. She answered after the first ring, her voice light and cheerful, unaware of the storm that was about to hit. "Michael!" she exclaimed. "Everything's ready for tomorrow, right? I'm so excited, I can hardly wait." Michael's breath caught in his throat. He had to gather himself. "Sarah, we need to talk," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I need to see you, now." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then she responded, her tone suddenly cautious. "What's wrong?" "It's about the wedding," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I know what you've been doing." The silence that followed was deafening. Sarah didn't answer, and Michael felt his pulse quicken. He hung up without another word, his feet carrying him toward her apartment as though they were on autopilot. His body moved, but his mind was still reeling. Days passed in a blur, and after canceling the wedding, Michael didn't know what to do with himself. The anger, the pain, the confusion. It all blended together into an overwhelming ache. He refused to contact Sarah. Instead, he spent his days pacing, reflecting, trying to piece together the wreckage of his life. A few months later, he received a call that shook him to his core. Sarah had given birth to their child, a son. The news hit him like a ton of bricks. Despite everything, Michael's heart felt a flicker of hope. He had always wanted to be a father, and even though their relationship had ended in betrayal, he couldn't ignore the part of him that still wanted to be there for his child. Against his better judgment, he decided to visit Sarah at the hospital. His heart ached as he walked through the sterile, brightly lit hallways, knowing the pain that would follow this encounter. But as he reached her room, his world was turned upside down once again. There, holding his newborn son, was Sarah's boss, standing by her bedside with a look of familiarity that Michael instantly recognized. His eyes went wide, his breath catching in his throat. The baby, swaddled in a soft blue blanket, looked up at him, and for a moment, Michael's heart stopped. It wasn't the child that shattered him. It was the undeniable resemblance. The baby's features, the sharpness of the jawline, the curve of the nose, all of it mirrored Sarah's boss, the man who had been so intimately involved with her. Michael stood frozen in the doorway, his mind racing. He wanted to scream, to demand answers, but he knew deep down that the truth was already laid out in front of him. His worst fears had come true. "Sarah!" Michael's voice broke the silence as he stormed into the room, his anger and heartbreak rising to the surface. Sarah looked up, startled, but then quickly composed herself. "Michael," she said softly, as though seeing him was the most natural thing in the world. But Michael couldn't hold back anymore. "That's your boss, isn't it?" he spat, pointing toward the man still holding the baby. "Is this your idea of a sick joke? You betrayed me, and now you've brought me here to witness this?" The boss stood up, a smug smile spreading across his face, but Michael didn't care. He was no longer interested in what they had to say. The truth had been revealed, and it was worse than anything he could have imagined. Sarah's affair had gone beyond texts and photos. It had resulted in a child that Michael couldn't possibly call his own. "I never meant for this to happen," Sarah whispered, her eyes brimming with tears. "It wasn't supposed to be this way." Michael's chest tightened with rage. "How could you? How could you do this to me? We were about to spend the rest of our lives together, and you throw it all away for him." Her tears didn't matter anymore. The betrayal was too deep. The pain of knowing she had deceived him in such an intimate way was something Michael knew he would never forget. Michael left the hospital that day feeling like a shell of the man he had been just a few months ago. The anger inside him burned brighter than ever before, but instead of seeking revenge in a destructive way, he knew he had to do something to expose the truth. He used his resources, connections, his own network, the leverage he had over people who knew Sarah's boss, and within days, the affair and the resulting child were no longer secrets. Social media, news outlets, and even her colleagues at work found out about the affair in an explosive public reveal. Sarah's life, as she knew it, was shattered. Her reputation, her career, everything she had worked for, was destroyed. And while Michael wasn't proud of the way it all unfolded, he couldn't deny that the satisfaction of seeing her exposed gave him a sense of closure. The betrayal Michael experienced taught him a harsh lesson. Trust and loyalty are the pillars of any relationship. Without them, everything else crumbles. Sarah's actions shattered not only his heart, but their future together. She had broken the most sacred promise of all, to be honest, to be loyal, and to protect each other above all else. In the end, Michael learned that revenge might give temporary satisfaction, but the real healing comes from moving on and learning to trust again, not necessarily others, but himself. He realized that no one else's betrayal could define him or his future. He walked away, stronger, wiser, and ready to rebuild his life without the shadows of Sarah's lies lingering over him. Thank you for watching, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do so and press the notification bell. This way, you'll stay updated with more shocking real-life stories.